There we go. Thank you so much. And Scott is out west in Washington. And those silly gentlemen thought it would be a good idea to leave Cecilia in charge. Thank you for the vote of confidence, Brenda and Julie. I appreciate it.
I thought you were always in charge.
I was going to say, what's different about tonight? We know who pulls the strings. We got it. You just got out the middleman. Good for you.
It just takes time. Now, what I should do is make someone more competent than I a co-host, which we will get to. But I don't want to lose any more time in this hour. I'm so glad to see everyone here tonight. I'm sure that we're stopping our world to be here, whether you're coming from your MEA. I know that they're happening all over the place. Whether you're out there in Texas, Brian, I'm sure you were busy this weekend, or up north or out west or wherever they're happening, all the conferences and things that are going on in your world, to make time to be with us tonight. We're just so grateful. You're in for quite a treat. Our focus this month, in the month of February, is on motivation. And I think that sometimes, people kind of think motivation extrinsic, inspiration is intrinsic. And really what you'll find in SLAM is that we often talk about motivation, but in terms of intrinsic motivation. And it can be really, really powerful, especially when you embrace it, because then you kind of unleash the full potential and perform at our most optimal levels. And for those of you that have your copy of Craft and Culture, I'll guide you to chapter 9. That's where you can really see more about that, the schema. You can read more about that in Craft and Culture, Becoming a Music Teacher Leader, and learn more about the intrinsic motivation theory. But I do want to share one thought with you before I pass it to my friend Brian. In terms of inspiration. And you may have seen this in our words from Tim this week, but in his absence, let me share these words with you. They're from Chaim Ginot, who's a school teacher and a psychologist. And he says that I have come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. I possess tremendous power to make life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis is escalated or de-escalated. And a person is humanized or dehumanized. If we treat people as they are, we make them worse. If we treat people as they ought to be, we help them become what they are capable of becoming. And isn't that what we should be doing as teachers for our students, helping them to become what they are capable of becoming? So I'll share those words with you. I'll share it also in the chat here, but I want to turn it over to our Vice President, Brian Christian.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Cecilia. Before I get started on talking about motivation, I just wanted to say Scott Rush was presenting this weekend at actually on Thursday afternoon at Texas Music Educators Association convention. And I presided for him, which is a big word for just introducing him. Guys, he absolutely knocked it out of the park. I had never heard Scott present before in this fashion. And I mean, he was talking so fast because he knew that he was having a hard time getting it all in the hour that he had. But it was fantastic. And just kudos to him. I've already shared that personally, but I wanted to shine that limelight on him in front of you guys for just a little bit. There were over 600 people in attendance at that. The room sat about 12 or 1,100 probably, and I just averaged every roll. That was one of my responsibilities, and it was definitely 600 plus. So and he absolutely put a good word out for Slam, so that was really cool. Um, I when Cecilia asked me to talk about or say something about motivation, I'm just the world's worst at this kind of thing. I'm not good at putting into words because I don't think about stuff very often like that. I mean, I think about it, but I don't think about doing things like that very often. And shame on me, I guess. But I think what helps me be motivated is doing things for other people. And my cousin lives in College Station, and he just preached his first sermon not too long ago at their church, and I got to watch it. And his point was that no gesture is too small to make a significant impact. And I started thinking about that, and it is so very true. And as an example, one of my assistants one time, I was out. I can't remember if it was like a knee surgery or a back surgery or what, but I was out, and he came into my office unrequested and unannounced. I was at home, and he cleaned my office, y'all. He cleaned my office. And I mean, like that was a major chore. I shouldn't say no action is too small because that was big, but just that little thing, because he's sort of OCD and my office was bothering him. So, it did him good for that. But it was just an incredible gesture and really meant a lot to me. But that's the kind of thing that motivates me. But as I was at TMEA, I just was hearing all these great clinics and concerts and everything, and that motivated me. And I was in the exhibit hall, and I went to go see Alec Harris, and Dick Floyd was there. They were talking, and Dick was signing books. And I just decided, you know what? I'm going to buy some books. So I bought my first copy of Crafting Culture. I bought both of Dick Floyd's book and Paula Kreider's book and one other. I can't remember what it is. But guys, for me, I am a slow reader, and I can't read without falling asleep like before I even turn a page. So this is saying something. On Saturday morning, I just blocked out about 3.5 hours, and I read the preface and the introduction and 7 chapters, y'all. I am 2/3 through the book that Dick Floyd wrote, and it's the artistry of music and or teaching and making music. And I am already just blown away. I mean, first chapter, I was hooked. And so I wanted to just read 3 paragraphs from this because he does talk about motivation and inspiration. And so this is from the first or the second chapter. Um, Author and lecturer Simon Sinek, who is described by TED Talks as a simple but powerful model for inspirational leadership, believes that people don't react to what we say or do, but rather to their perception of why we say or do it. Inspired people are driven by a purpose, cause, or belief. When others recognize that purpose, cause, or belief, they are likely to embrace the vision required to achieve it. They commit not because of what we do, but because of why we are inspired to do it. Sinek claims that Martin Luther King Jr. was inspirational not because he had a plan, but because he had a dream. That's the first paragraph. Then the second paragraph I wanted to read, it says, to be successful, to motivate others, to attain goals, we must focus our energy on perceived objectives. If we allow ourselves to be diverted or sidetracked by the inevitable daily variables that will come our way, the momentum required to realize our goals will be diffused or diminished. Even more importantly, these diversions make it difficult, if not impossible, for those we seek to inspire to remain focused on our vision. I just thought that was pretty great and indicting to me. And then lastly, he says, this is Dick Floyd talking. Where do we find that inspiration that we hope to share with others? There was a saying often heard in the counterculture of the 60s that went like this: where it is where you find it. Perhaps that adage is totally relevant when we discuss inspiration. Inspiration manifests itself in countless ways with dramatic variables from one person to another. What creates that spark and turns it into a flame for one person might be irrelevant to another. All that is required is that we diligently seek out the source of our inspiration, embrace it, refine it, and reveal it to others in all that we say and do. If they in turn take ownership in what we impart, then we have been an inspiration to others. So I love that we have to share, you know, what inspires us. We have to share what motivates us. We have to be, sometimes we say fake it till you make it, but I know that when you get into that classroom and you're about to step on that podium, be excited about what you're about to do. Be excited about that piece of music. Be excited about that warm up and the things that you're going to accomplish in that warm up and apply to the music. And you know, we always talk about our bands and choirs and orchestras take on the personality of their directors. So if you are inspired and you act motivated, they will as well. So there you go. That's all for me, you guys. Thank you very much, Cecilia.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian. It's so true, right? And I'm so excited about our guest this evening. Talk about someone who has inspired me for the majority of my career. From one swift kick in the pants years and years ago in Mars, Pennsylvania, right? When I first got to meet the Beth Fabrizio. For those of you who don't know Beth, I mean, just to tell you a little bit about her, and talking about her bio is just it's such a small snapshot. I mean, Beth is an artist and clinician for Daddario, right? She's also an educational clinician with the Conn-Selmer Corporation. She's an active adjudicator. She's guest conducting. She just spent, the past week in Nashville teaching and then conducting, right? She's a clinician. Before that, what was it? Beth, am I 36, 30? Is that right? 36 years in the classroom. Her degrees are from Eastman in Ithaca, y'all, in clarinet performance, in conducting. I mean, the wealth of her knowledge and experience is just astounding. But what I honestly find to be the most impressive about this human is that my dear friend Beth continues to give and give and give because her heart for teachers and for students just continues to grow. I talk about someone who has made a significant impact on me personally, but on our world. I'm so thrilled that you get to spend some time tonight with Beth Fabrizio. Please welcome our guest, Beth. Ma'am.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm overly humbled as we begin this, and don't get me teary-eyed because you all know that I'm an emotional mess half the time anyway. Anyway, it's so great to be with all of you, and I love how both of them just kind of really set this up for what I'm hoping will be kind of another direction. And it's funny because as I was thinking about how to do this and what this looked like from the beginning to the end, I really wanted to make sure that we talked kind of what they mentioned and what they said, but also as we kind of talked about how you make sure that you take care of you and you continue to design and define as we move forward. Because let's face it, as we all know, what you all do in the classroom on a regular basis is a yeoman's job, and you are rock stars in my world. And every time I go out and work with people, I remind them of how much they are rock stars in their world, tremendously more so than ever before. But I think we sometimes forget, and I know I am the worst about doing this, and Cecilia will agree with me that unfortunately sometimes I don't do the things that I say I should do because I don't give myself the time. So as I was asked to do this and started putting this together, just so you all realize, I am really thinking, I am starting to journal for the very first time in my life. I was terrible. I didn't do it. And I now realize that with my life being public school left, and I retired in June of 2020 during COVID, or right at the end of my school year from COVID, and opened up my own business and started working full out for Conn-Selmer and Daddario, but I knew I needed to, I'm busier than ever. And it is not great for me to go into situations and not feel motivated. And as Brian just mentioned, passionate and excited about what I am prepared to do for whether it be an MEA or a guest conducting moment, or as I just spent 4 back-to-back days in middle schools in the Nashville area working with middle school kids and teachers. So looking at this slide, this is to me is huge. And I know you know this, but I think breaking it down, and I really had to think about this as I went. So I looked at teacher, student, parent. And again, we touch more than just the kid. We touch the parent, we touch family. Sometimes we've taught 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 kids in that family, or brothers and sisters, or cousins, and whatever. So it's not just us with the kiddo. It's going beyond. But as we break these down, mindset and mood, mental and physical, personal enjoyment, boy, we think we leave ourselves out of that a lot. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Increased attention and just thinking, like getting our brain engaged every day to what we need to do. And I'm not good at that either. And I'm starting to try and not so much meditate, but pull a great thought every day to get my day started. And then outside support. And I will tell you, my good friend Joel Denton kicked me in the butt years ago to remind myself that, man, I need to make sure I am asking for help and that we're not here by ourselves. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go, but I love these quotes. The one that probably is the most important to me and the one that made used to make my kids really laugh all the time because we would say it first thing in the morning is you did not wake up to be mediocre. And I think those are the things, all those where words leave off, music begins. We know that we're passionate about what we do, but it's always the simple process, simple that produces the marvelous. I think sometimes we overthink, we over we want to prepare, but be cautious that we don't over, but in the process make ourselves crazy. And then push yourself because no one else is going to do that. So again, we talk about all these things, but how do we do them in an intelligent fashion? And so for me, things I'm trying to do, and again, bear with me, these are things I am just as guilty as the next one of not always preparing myself as I need to make sure I'm taking care of myself. So mindset and mood, we always talk about fixed and growth, right? Always, always, always. But I loved how this was set because it's there. On the fixed side, what not to say. I give up. What's the point in trying? How many times do you walk in your classroom and go, okay, I've had it, or you've had a terrible weekend or a terrible day before, or a parent or an admin or someone has just really made you feel terrible about what's happening. So I'm going to say, I'm going to try and stay away from that and go to the growth. I'll try it another way. Boy, and I say this all the time when I presented at MEA. How many times do we wonder how our kids survived during the first 5 years of our teaching? Really, truly survived. And we survived because we were anxious and nervous wrecks, whether it be, again, kids, administrators, whatever. But I'll try it another way and I can train my brain. I can't do this, but I will. I'm not perfect, and struggling means I'm learning. And I think that last statement, struggling means I'm learning, is the most important of all those. I think if we're not learning, we're not growing, and we're not allowing ourselves to be motivated because we'll never grow. It's funny. I've been in Florida, Indiana, Ohio, and Georgia presenting so far this year. And thank goodness I'm heading to Pennsylvania in April as well. And every time I sit down and I look around the room, it's not just people that are in the classroom or new people coming in. In the last one in Ohio, I had over 10 teachers that were retired that still want to do what they want to do. They want to help, they want to grow and build. And I think that's so positive. I also love the top right-hand side, just all the things, positive, negative, mindset, thinking. But below it is, again, what's most important to me, the reset, the refocus, and the restart, and how we do that. We have to trust ourselves to make those choices. But again, putting it off to the side and forgetting about what we're supposed to do. And I'm so guilty. I was on the plane yesterday praying I was going to get home because I was coming out of Nashville, going into Charlotte and Charlotte to Rochester. And it's always you're juggling all the balls in the air, wondering if you're going to fly, especially with the weather. My goal had been to open a book and start to read. So Brian, I'm with you. I hear you and I see you. And part of it is the new book I'm in with Steve Meyer that I have not read the whole thing yet. Bad person that I'm in. So that was a goal. I was going to start to read. And instead, I put my earbuds on and fell asleep. Now, there's a balance there. So I had to trust that what happened was what needed to have happened for yesterday. But I'm not quite sure because I felt guilty, which I shouldn't have, but I did because I knew I needed to do some reading. So for me, part of my journaling is going to be including not just my work to-do list, but also my motivational to-do list. So this next screen is huge to me, and this really came out of conversations I've had with teachers in the past month. There's a lot of hurting people still around the country, and it breaks my heart. But I have been trying to remind them because the word chaos has come out of every single conversation. Chaos, and I love this quote, chaos is the space of change that it's not yet harmonized or synchronized. And boy, ain't that the truth. But I think we don't do what's on the other side of the page. One thing, just do one thing. I walked into a classroom this past week and the teacher was in tears and she had been moved into a new building and she hadn't had time to rearrange her room and things were all over the map and she was worried about me and how I would feel. And we got done with all the things and teaching all the kids and she looked at me and she said, I can't do this. I said, yes, you can. And we're going to do this together. And we literally went to the back of the room and completely rearranged just her percussion section. That was it. That's all we did. He said, and she said, should we do more? I said, nope, nope, we're stopping right here. This is enough for you to think about. And she said, I feel so much better. I said, and I do too for you. But you have to come in here every day and do just one thing that will help to eliminate, hopefully, the chaotic feeling and the momentary anxiety that may come about you. I don't know about you, but I can't go into a classroom or my office that's not organized. It drives me crazy. And for me, that's motivation. I want to be motivated as I move forward and move into the next space. Here's something else I think I did really well during COVID, and I'm slipping. My mental and physical health. I was really taking care of myself. I was walking, I was exercising, I was balancing my life so well during COVID. And we got out of that, and I started slipping away. Pieces of a time started to slip away. So for me, again, it's back into getting back to the gym or going out and walking or relaxing or reading a book. Again, Brian, what you said is so huge. Reading for me is cathartic, and I know it is for people across the country, whether it be something in our world or something else that we're interested in, or listening to a great podcast or whatever. But I think all of these pieces, these components for me are so important. And I really believe it was so funny that the light bulb picture with the brain. I was reading an article the other day about how much our brain really can take before it completely shuts down and goes into complete dark mode. And it feels that way at times, especially when we are not able to put everything in its box mentally and physically as we work through. One band director just posted from Florida tonight. He's going to the gym at night. He used to go in the morning, it didn't work in his day, and he feels like he can prepare himself motivationally and with his passion to go to the gym at night. And it's cathartic for him and it moves forward. Here's something else. I have not been to New York City in way too long, and I miss going to the show. I miss going to see great performances. I miss just all those moments. But it doesn't have to be purchasing a ticket to make that happen. It can be whatever your personal enjoyment is. I know Cecilia has a love of her beautiful dogs. And I know my husband and I love to ride motorcycles. And I've not been on a motorcycle in over a year because I've let that slip from me. And again, in my journaling, because I wanted to make sure that I made this real for me as well as hopefully for some of you, that I'm starting to make sure that I'm putting time in there because my husband deserves some of me as well. I deserve to do something that I enjoy. And I'm also making sure that I'm starting to take a look around at James Taylor is going to be out at Red Rock this summer, and I'm going. I'm going. Hopefully, I'm going with Leslie Gilreath, which I'm really psyched about. So yeah, exactly. So those are the things that, and it makes my heart so happy. And then those things, I used to tell my kids about that in the classroom. It shared my opportunities with them. It made me feel great about what I was doing, and I was bringing another component, another piece of me back to the table. Pure enjoyment, just being. My happy place is sitting on a beach. We can't do that we're in Rochester, New York right now. It is 10 degrees and we are expecting another 5 inches of snow. So the beach is out of the equation. But exactly, Matt, you are absolutely correctly. But for me, it's just breathing and being in the beach. For me, it's also sitting with my clarinet and practicing. From that's just it's cathartic. It's again, it shows my students, whether I'm out doing what I'm doing now or when I was back in the classroom, my enjoyment for why I do what I do and getting better at my craft. I so much did not do that early in my teaching career. I played and I was cramming in practice sessions, but I wasn't enjoying the moment. So whether it's practicing my instrument or watching myself try and get through a new piece in conducting or journaling, as I mentioned, and that's why I put that there, because truly, truly, I think we need to just have something that's pure enjoyment and just allow us to be, because it's important. It really does. It takes us to the next side. I absolutely adore this picture. But again, this reminds me of my friend Joel Denton and his love of creating and crafting connections on the outside that take us to the other side. And again, Dr. Tim said that to me years ago, right? Takes us from one place to the next. And our friends do that, and our colleagues do that. And I am thankful I have so many of those people. I pick up the phone and Joel will answer, or Nola Jones, or Joanne Hood, or Leslie, or, I mean, there's Dr. Tim. We sometimes are on the phone at 3 a.m. Thank you very much. In Dr. Tim's real world, because that's his real world. But those people are going to take you to the next level. I also believe that we don't record ourselves enough in the classroom. And I truly believe that that is another, it's hugely humbling. But it also takes me, when I'm not watching myself, I forget what I really sound like and treat others like. I had somebody recording me this past weekend doing the honor band I was doing because I wanted to watch myself in rehearsals. I wanted to see what kind of passion and motivation I bring to my students. What I think I may be doing is not necessarily what's coming across to those kiddos. So I wanted to watch. And the other thing I don't think that we do enough, and that's that picture below, do we sit with friends and talk about scores? I have not sat with a bunch of people and discussed a new piece of music or a new book or whatever. So one of my goals for this next year is to create a score club. Forget the book club. I'm creating a score club. So I'm going to work with other people that I know and love to sit around and talk about scores. What's working, what's not, the new stuff that's out there. What do you really love? What are the intrinsic things, or what's the struggle? I mean, it may sound very surface, but to me, that's how I take it to the next level. And things we forget. Again, help needed. Don't be afraid of change. Beautiful things can grow when you're willing to let go. Boy, that's a mouthful. And Cecilia, I think back to when you and I first met, and I know, and I will say this to everyone in this room with the honesty of all of me. I had an edge to me when I first started to teach that came from my dad, because that's the way my dad was. I remember having a conversation with Anthony Maiello, who's a very dear friend and one of my second daddies, um, and Stan Schoonover back in the day, because he'd student taught with my father. John Casagrande student taught with my dad, all those guys. And I remember that's how I was brought up, is that edge was supposed to be there. Female or male, it didn't matter. Well, I've let go of that. I've let go of that, and now I'm willing to change and make sure that I feel more comfortable in my own skin, in my own words. If you ever need a helping hand, I'll be there on the double just as fast as I can. And again, ain't no mountain high enough. And I think that song lends itself to be able to take that level. And don't let anybody else dictate what your passion is. And again, I was letting that happen to some extent with what I had seen. Not to say that my dad's not a fabulous musician and a wonderful person, but I couldn't be him. I had to be me. And I think sometimes when we go to an MEA or we watch something of this sort and we think, I'm going to take pieces that you know work for you. You do you the best you know how to do it. Because with new growth, we win, we learn, and we love. And I truly believe that that takes us to the next level of all things that we do and that we need to do. because we need to listen. We need to listen to ourselves. We need to listen to our kiddos. Whether you're still in the classroom, you're retired, you're out working with whatever level you're working with. I'm heading to work with an indoor winds group, Vaccaro Winds with WGI next week for 4 days in McAllen, Texas. And I'm already structuring, knowing what these kiddos deal with on a regular basis, where they live, what they do, what I need to share, not what's in my brain, but what they need from me, what passion, what motivation, and what teaching tools are going to best serve them. So make sure, friends, that you listen to yourselves, listen to your heart, listen to your head, and take care of yourself in the best way that you know, to make sure that we can truly be what we need to be for all of us.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, goodness. Before we go into breakout rooms, does anyone have a question that you'd like to ask of Beth while we're here all together? Can throw it in the chat or just unmute yourself. Matt, yeah, please do.
Hey Beth, I was just curious, what made you realize that you need to take the edge off?
When kids should be, and adults, people that you work with should have an expectation of you, and there should be a respect. But when children or adults feel that there's a space or a lack of trust or a feeling of anxiety to the point where we can't get better at what we're doing, then that's when I knew. And it didn't necessarily come from a student or a parent. It really came from me, looking and feeling. The more I was at ease with what I was doing, and a lot of that came from, in all honesty, Matt, the more prepared you are to do things, the better off you are in the classroom. And we all know that. But that helped to take me to the other side. Like spending just 15 more minutes on a score, making sure I had all the things in place, made me not necessarily want to reach out when somebody didn't do it the right way. Maybe it was me not saying it the right way. But again, I think I've taught drum corps, I've taught marching band, I've taught concert programs, the gamut. But I started to feel a consistency across the board from group to group, that maybe I just needed to be more me, just more the sincerity that I think I want others to bring to me is what I want to bring to them.
Thank you.
Any other questions before Beth sends us off into our breakout rooms? She's got a challenging question for us to discuss. So you might want to get your questions in before she poses hers to us. All right, Beth, I think they're ready for it.
By the way, Carol Husa conducted me he was at Cornell and he came to Ithaca College. And yes, I have been with him on the podium, scared the bejeebers out of me, but he was with me. Just like I got a chance, believe it or not, Aaron Copeland, I played in the youth orchestra in Rochester, New York for years, and he came and conducted a concert.
For those of you wondering, I had asked her that individually before she started, and she just now saw it. So thank you, Beth, for answering that question. I had the good fortune of playing his music for Prague under his baton at CBD&A in '91, and life-changing. He was amazing. That's why I asked.
Yeah, it was I graduated from Eastman in 83, so 85 was Ithaca. Yeah, crazy, huh?
Yeah,
Just shows you
that's awesome.
I'm just a little older, friend. Sorry about that.
Young in spirit.
Why, thank you.
Indeed. So Beth talked with us a little bit about chaos, right? And that sense of space where change hasn't really, what is it? It hasn't harmonized yet, or it hasn't synchronized yet. So we were saying before everyone joined us that we all kind of have our own chaos in our world, whether it be in our personal lives or in our professional lives. The students gave me one of those little wooden signs. It's sitting outside of our office that says, "You call it chaos, we call it family." So we live with that little bit of chaos. But Beth, you had thought that you were thinking it might be a good idea for us to kind of talk about in our breakouts how we envision dealing with our chaos. Yes? Did you want to talk a little bit about that before we open up the rooms?
Yeah, I think it's huge. And again, as I said earlier, I'm feeling it more and more, even though we're trying to get on the other side of COVID. It's not just the newer teachers, and we're losing a lot of newer teachers, which makes me sad, who feel like they can't get through the chaos. But I think it's those of us who are more seasoned as well. Again, I feel like we have a tendency to jump. So jump and try and solve everything at once versus. So how do you envision chaos in your world? And how do you envision trying to adjust, monitor, and work through the chaos that takes place on a daily basis for you in your setting?
All right. So we're going to give you about 10 minutes in your breakout rooms. You're about to get an invitation to join a room. Please enjoy. And then I'll give you a 2-minute warning before we bring you back in together. Dr. Morris, what were you talking about in your room that was so compelling?
We had a great time with Beth. We were talking about everything from learning about automating our systems to help deal with some of the chaos, to giving ourselves a little bit of grace and space to be able to do that. Jaden also put in and I think she was able to put it in the chat, a book, The Art of Possibility, and which helps her be able to deal with some of the things she's experiencing as a pre-service teacher. It was a great time, just not long enough.
So glad to hear about that. How about Jonathan? What were you up to in your room? Where did you go, my friend? There you are.
Oh man, we were talking about chaos, broken cellos. Oh, God, what else? Just all sorts of stuff. And then we were all kind of, I was fixated on the whole idea of like running from our childhood, like demons, and like trying to figure out why we're so intense about everything. And
Snow blowers.
so,
That's why.
yeah, exactly. And then Amanda was talking about how chaos is relative because, like we can all handle a lot of stuff, whether that's good or bad, after a few years in our career. And so, yeah, it was a lot of perspective discussion. So anyway, that's what we did.
Great. How about Bobby? What was going on in your room?
There we go. Actually, it was a great conversation. Matt was actually speaking, and for those of you who don't know, Matt is the athletic band director at Western Carolina University with a marching band of about 450 people, and he's been there. I think is it Matt 34 years, but this is the first year as sort of the director. Oh, sorry. He's been here for just a couple of years because he's so very young.
Yeah, thank
And there it is. And he was talking about the idea of being organized and trying to stay in front of things and keeping the big picture in mind and trying to prioritize that stuff. And talked about making sure that she can be prepared and not get overwhelmed. And sometimes the idea of looking at emails is a really dangerous thing because you can kind of go down the rabbit hole. And then Deb talked to us about how there's a session that she went to where they said, try to only get 3 things done in the day. And while that sounds like that's not a lot, in doing those 3 things, you end up getting more done in the process, but not being overwhelmed. And then our last comment I think I can't, Jeff, did you say that one? I can't remember if that was right or not, but Jeff said the idea of slowing down the classroom, which I absolutely loved. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's slowing down your brain, slowing down the students, slowing down the music so that you can get a handle on the things that you want to deal with, as opposed to getting overwhelmed and feeling the cacophony of stuff.
That's great. Anyone else have any aha moments that you want to share?
Want to share some from ours. Maurice had a great point. We need to remember to celebrate the moments that are after the chaos. You know, it can really stress us out. And then many of us, we're our own worst critics. So we forget to celebrate the good. And then Jen, we sort of nutshelled her at the end there. She was saying some really great and personal things, kind of being vulnerable. But what I took from it was sometimes we have to be okay with the chaos. We have to live in it and learn to accept that a little bit because you don't necessarily have control. That was just great in our room. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Beth, do you have any closing thoughts you want to share with us before we wrap up tonight?
There we go. Sorry, it took me a second to be able to do that. Yeah, Jane, like I said, or I should say, Marcus said, Jaden put the name. I have not read The Art of Possibility, and I need to. And she brought that book up, and that's another great resource. But I think, and so Jaden, thank you. That was sweet, and I'm glad it's working for you. And I'm going to ask that it's going to work for me. But it's been interesting listening to how everybody's pulled their information back together. And the big word that came out of all of this, besides Maurice's make sure that we're celebrating after the fact, is making sure that we're looking at the big picture, like the whole thing, making sure that we're not looking at what is our end result. We all live by backward design. We truly do. That's our world. We live in what we know we want at the end. So again, as we're talking about do one thing at a time, make sure that we're really thinking about the approach to how we get there systematically and in a relaxed format. And again, if we wait to the last minute to do it, and I can remember those days when I did, it would make me absolutely crazy, and the motivation and passion would go right out of the window. I'd feel overwhelmed and the world would come crashing down. So the more I do, the more I think about things, again, that end result, as Maurice said, being able to think about what I want to be able to really, really celebrate the end of the moment. But how I get there has to be that organized approach, and we have to do it early enough to make sure that we take the pressure and the anxiety out of the equation. Friends, this has been more cathartic, I think, for me than it's been for all of you, because it reminds me of what I need to continue to do. And we got to talk the talk and walk the walk, right? In order to make sure that this happens. So you have no idea how blessed I have been able to be. It's been for me to be able to be in this room with you tonight.
Well, you are always welcome, and we hope that you make time to join us again and again. You're now part of the Slamily as one of our.
Ah, okay.
And that's gonna next week we have Matt with us, so he's gonna be back for more. Tonight I want to ask my good friend Bobby if he'll bring everything together for us before we say good night for this one.
Well, it's been I needed it tonight as well as just kind of a reminder of why we do what we do. I had a really interesting week. I've been thinking about what motivates me to teach, and I had a really powerful conversation with a junior saxophone player. He's one of my drum majors, and he came in and said, "Mr. Lambert, why did you choose to teach?" Why do you ask? And is this a sign where you're like, you should probably rethink that decision now? He said, no, I'm actually trying to decide if I want to do music education or music performance. I love them both. And I'm trying to decide, like, what made you want to be a teacher? So my first impression was to tell him, run for the hills. He's a great kid and he's super smart. So I was like, you probably shouldn't do this. But I told him that no one can tell him whether he should teach or whether he shouldn't, because as a teaching is a calling. It's not really a choice. In the opening, Cecilia talked about how we're the climate of our classroom. We can either heal or harm, and that convicts me. Um, it doesn't say that we can average the classroom or we can milk toast the classroom. So I'm not going to do anything wrong, but I'm not going to do anything. That's not an answer. We can't indifferent the classroom, nor can we merely tolerate it. The students hang their perception of the day on our mood and our demeanor. Our negative is eviscerating. Our positive is inspiring. However, our laissez-faire or blasé or I'm over it, I just can't today still diminishes the almost same degree as the out and out rough comments and stern criticism, that edge that Beth was talking about. I think just as damaging is the indifference. I think there has to be purpose there. So now that you know that, how do you change it? Well, what did it for you? Why did you feel called to teach? Which teacher made you consider it first? Which teacher made you consider yourself special? And which teacher made you know that you mattered? Um, I have to tell you a really quick story about my daughter. She is a sophomore in my band, but more importantly, she is in Hadestown right now. She did not get any of the leads, but she is in the ensemble cast and she's learning more about dance and movement and all these things. And we walked in one day and she was really dreading going to practice and really didn't want to go. And I came back and picked her up and she was over the moon. I mean, happier than I had seen her in a while. I was like, Maria, what happened? She was like, Mr. Moser, he's the director of the play, said I was doing great. I said, really? What were you doing? She was like, we were just doing this dance move. And he yelled out over everyone, you go, girl. And it was wonderful. And she was on cloud nine the rest of that night and all day the next day until she got back to theater. And I started thinking about how powerful that was and how he just said one thing. It was so powerful to her, they actually videotaped the practices. She found the place in the video where he said that to her and she clipped it and sent it to me because she was so proud of that. As a dad, that hits hard because I know I have the power to do that to people or I have the power to take it away. Now, here's the thing that gets in our way. Social media hurts us just as much as it does kids. It tells us that so many are so perfect so much of the time. And what we don't see is how long those videos really take in process or how random they might actually be. That's a lie. Pretty much most of everything on social media is a lie to a certain extent or a glazed over truth. You're the truth of the situation and you're the truth in these kids' lives. Be honest with yourself and know your worth. You are called to inspire, therefore you can't fail. That's the thing that I've just kind of gotten into my brain is if this really is a calling, if I truly believe that, I can't fail. I can miss the mark from time to time, but I will empower through my wins and my losses. And I hope that helps you get through your week and empowers you while you empower others. Thanks, Cecilia.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Brian, everyone. Thank you, Slamily. It's always great to spend this time with you. Make it a great week for yourself, whether you have time off or with your students. And we'll see you again next week with our guest, Matt Henley.